Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of VUX World. I'm your host, Kane Sims, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Shridhar Marri, who's the CEO and co-founder of Senseforth, making moves. Welcome, Shridhar.
Hi, Ken. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, tuning in from India. 5:30 over there now, which is weird because a lot of the time zones tend to be chunked up into hours. And when we were arranging this, it was like, that's 5:30. I was thinking, is it 5:30? Do we do half hours? I was a bit caught off guard there.
5:30.
Five
Yes.
thirty. There you go. Yeah, that's it. Nice. And so, yeah, definitely interested in getting into this conversation. We will get into that in just one second. But for those of you tuning in, whether you're tuning in live, whether you're tuning in on the podcast, you have to get yourself to VUX at Voice 22, the Voice Summit in Arlington, Virginia, on October the 11th. VUX World. Well, the summit is from the 10th to the 12th, but on the 11th, VUX World has our own stage, our own room. We're running the programming. And if you want to learn all about contact center automation, then you need to get yourself there. It is an opportunity to learn and network with the industry and meet clients, meet buyers, meet technology providers, learn how it's actually done. And we've got a whole host of interesting conversations lined up and a bunch of interesting content, a bunch of networking events that's going on as well. So you need to go to voicesummit.ai /VUX world or just voicesummit.ai and find out more about that. If you want to save 20% on your tickets, you can use the promo code VUX20. And we were just saying before we started this that getting back in person and being in person with actual people, not people that are flat with monitor outlines around their heads, is absolutely fantastic. And so I hope you can all join us in Arlington in a couple of weeks' time. And so on with the show. Shridhar, thank you again for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into, or where did Senseforth come from?
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Ken. It's really a pleasure to be here. In fact, I consider myself very fortunate to work at the intersection of design, technology, and business. And my even my education experience, my life, and even my ikigai is at the intersection of design, technology, and business. And from childhood, I think one of my passions is to imagine solutions, new solutions for existing problems, and then sort of build solutions to those problems, and then really make them work. And that's been a great passion. And I really love what I'm doing, and this is the best it can get. There are about three kinds of CEOs in the world. The first kind are the creator kind of CEOs, creator builder CEOs, who would probably conceptualize an idea, get a team together, build a solution, take it out to the market, find the product market fit, and probably achieve success, and then sort of scale the business to maybe $1 to $2 million revenue, right? And that's the first kind of CEO. And the second kind of CEO is what I call the scale CEOs, and probably they will take that idea, that early solution, and scale it from 1 million or 2 million to 20 million, and that's the second kind of CEO. And the third kind of CEO is the growth CEO, and probably they will take the 20 million to 200 million or whatever, right? So
Mm.
now I'm at this inflection point of sort of moving from the creator builder CEO to the scale CEO, and it is a steep, rugged hill,
Mm.
and it's pretty hard. And of course, I'm trying to embrace that challenge and then transform myself into a scale CEO right now.
Interesting. So, what is it that is so hard about being a scaling CEO? Is it because you need to find new markets, or figure out how to find those customers? Like, what is it particularly about the scaling part that's a challenge?
Well, I think it's a lot to do with the orientation of yourself, in the sense of fundamentally you are, at heart, at the center of your being, you are either one of these. See, different kinds of CEOs, and now
Mm.
and of course many people traverse this land of three different CEOs and then really scale well. And it requires learning different skills, and applying different lessons and so on. So that's the hard part. And also another key thing is the team that is required, from, let's say, from stage one to stage two or stage three, are completely different, and the challenges are different, and the business environment is different, and that's what creates that steep, rugged hill.
Interesting. And I suppose it gets steeper and more difficult when you're in such a, I would say, I suppose it's a competitive landscape. It's also a very kind of buoyant landscape at the minute in this particular industry, natural language processing, voice AI, conversational AI, things like that. How would you describe the kind of global market for these services at the moment, and how does that compare to when you started 5 years ago or so?
Well, I think this is obviously a nascent arena, if you will, and every day new things are happening, and it's constantly transforming, and that's a big challenge itself. And when we started out, we were probably one of the very early players in conversational AI in India, trying to build a proprietary natural language processing engine, and then try and use that to solve business problems. We've tried several use cases. In fact, we failed in many use cases, and then found our in our sweet spot, and that was great. Now, I think the fundamental to voice AI, or even AI, conversational AI using only text, is the natural language processing engine, right? So that's where the intelligence is, and understanding the intent, and figuring out a response, or an action and stuff like that, right? Now, early on when we started out, we started working with text and understanding a user intent expressed in textual form, and then taking an action based on that. And later, it's a natural extension to go into voice and deliver the same thing. Of course, the nuances are different, the challenges are different, and that's how this has been progressing.
Mm. It's interesting when often companies go from text to voice, because they often think that, not necessarily from a platform perspective, maybe you can shed some light on maybe some of this stuff, but quite often when a company that's been building conversational AI applications and they go from a chat interface to a voice interface, the kind of less mature organizations would believe that it's as simple as just finding some speech recognition and putting that on the front end. But actually, the way that people speak is entirely different to how they type. Semantically, it's completely different. You've got accents to deal with, you've got languages to deal with, you've got a whole range of different stuff. Then you've got the data that's available in somebody's voice. You've got their sentiment, you've got their mood, you can identify things like gender, you can profile things like personality types, you can do voice biometric authentication. The possibilities kind of open up. And even just from a design point of view, it's not the same as a chat interface necessarily. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, and especially coming from a platform perspective, where you've now got to consider voice and bringing voice into your NLP kind of stable. What are the kind of challenges in trying to do that?
There's several, right? For example, understanding text is a different challenge from understanding voice. Let me just give you an example. In fact, early on when Alexa was released, I bought one of those devices and put it in my home on the dining table, and I just wanted to see how people would interact even in my own home, right? So I think the premise of most of the voice interfaces even today is that conversation is a sequential one-on-one interaction, and that I think is a misnomer, because what happened at our dining table is that somebody was saying, Alexa, please play some jazz, and somebody's saying no, and somebody's saying, okay, eat your vegetables, it's good for your health, and Alexa is saying, I didn't understand any of this, right? So the whole the home environment is like a multi-party environment. So how does voice interfaces work in that scenario? is something that's not even cracked at all, right? I think that's where the home usage really is super complex because of the multi-activity environment. And I think and voice AI is still long way to go there to sort of start tackling those issues. But at the same time, there are things like some of them you've sort of touched upon, the prosody, for example, or interjections. We use a lot of interjections when we're speaking, and that is, I would say, and those are sort of hesitating kind of interjections, or some things could be emotive in the sense of I would say ouch, or great, or wow, something like that. So these are some of those interjections. They happen all the time, and technology, I think, is still not there to sort of handle all those kind of interjections, or even prosody, which is intonation, pitch, and all that, the variation in the pitch. So I think these are some of the steep challenges that technology overall needs to still tackle as we go along. Right now, I think it's about understanding the user intent, providing a response at that point of time. Now, of course, people are, trying barge in and all those technologies, and I think the voice is a very unique kind of experience, and I think probably that's the only experience where people can sort of interject each other, barge in, break the sentence. You can stop, in the middle of the sentence, repeat it, all kinds of things. So it's a beautiful and it's a fluid, very human medium, and that's what is fascinating about it.
It's very messy, though, isn't it?
You see,
From
it
a
is highly nuanced and messy.
Yeah, it's crazy. To be honest, it's actually amazing when you think of what we can actually do today. Anyway, you mentioned that example there of being around a smart speaker and having the background noise going on and stuff like that. And I actually think there has been some improvements to that, because one thing I can attest to is that, to be honest, the Amazon devices that we have downstairs, we've got the Echo Shows, and my son uses it pretty much every morning to watch his programs on TV when he's having his breakfast. And he got to the point yesterday, for the very first time, he said it a lot when he was a baby and stuff like that, and he said it a few times, but he's never really actually had Alexa do something for him. But literally this morning, as luck would have it, I heard him say, "Alexa, play Lego City on Prime," and lo and behold, Lego City played, and I thought, I got a little kind of proud moment there, because I thought he's figured out how to use it himself there. Um, but when I've kind of spoken to it, and I'll say something similar, and he's always talking in the background all the time. He'll say something, he'll comment on something, and I'll say something to Alexa, and then I'll wait. Obviously, Alexa will keep the mic open, and he's talking, and it'll pick him up.
Yeah.
But it kind of still recognizes my kind of intent. And I'm pretty sure when I first got an Amazon device, probably 2016, 2017, it never used to do that. I used to just trip out. So there's definitely like progress being made, would you say?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there's a daily progress in these technologies. So that's definitely is we can see it in a we can cognize it. Yeah, so that's there. But yeah, again, the messy parts of human conversation are still far from being actually automated. That is still that's still some years away, in my view.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so you mentioned there with Senseforth, you began trying to create some natural language processing engine that would be able to solve business problems. What kind of business problems were you intending to solve when you were first getting started?
Well, I think let me tell you a little bit about our origin story. Throughout the 80s and 90s, and software was becoming extremely complex, right? And large teams of people were using software that is super complicated, and also sometimes messy and chaotic kind of interfaces. And we wanted to actually we were in the thick of that action in a large SI, working in a large SI, And we said, look, this is enough, and we need to, we need to do something about it. How about removing this interface altogether? And that means talking about uh, using natural language interfaces, and whether it is text or voice. At that point of time, we said, okay, we'll first tackle the text part of it and build a natural language processing engine, using which we could, to an extent, remove the messy, complicated, inefficient user interfaces that were being built for software for several decades, right? So that's where we started, and once we sort of cracked some parts of the technology in NLP, and we started applying the same technology in certain business cases, banking and insurance and a few other domains, and we found that customer service is one area where large enterprises were having a huge difficulty. It was extremely difficult to scale, especially large enterprises. They had thousands of people in their call centers, and it is difficult to sort of hire them, train them, keep them up to date, and there is a huge attrition in call centers, and it is a highly repetitive and boring work, and it is becoming more and more expensive as you sort of expand your customer base. And that is the situation, and that's when we said, okay, we will jump into this customer care as an area and then solve some problems for large enterprises. So we started working with large banks and large insurance companies, and built customer interaction use cases, and slowly made them sticky with transactional capabilities. That means you can say, I want to transfer money to Kane tomorrow evening at 5:30, right? So that's a natural language input. You don't really need to log into your internet banking website, wade through the forms, fill out all the details and stuff like that. There are multiple aspects of this intent which are understood by our technology, and through integrations deliver the response, deliver the action. So that's where we started, and that's the beginning of Senseforth.
Right. And it sounds as though you mentioned there doing transactional kind of use cases, which is good. And that's kind of the promise of this stuff. You mentioned that trying to get over some of the clunky interfaces with some of those systems, and often it's disparate systems that are not really connected together that a lot of people have to kind of manage their way through. And that's kind of the promise of this technology is that interface layer. I was excited to hear you say the interface, because I think that's where a lot of the positive effects of this technology are. It's becoming the interface to what was previously a load of clunky kind of mess, basically. And I think that there's only, even now, there's teams who don't do transactional use cases, and they're kind of trying to get there, in part because of a lack of that infrastructure behind the scenes, but also in part whether it's risk, whether it's experience, whether it's not having the technology capabilities and stuff like that. So it's interesting because for me, it's always been obvious that it should all be about those transactional use cases because that's where the value is for the business. Yet in the market generally, not everyone's really trying to attack transactional use cases, which is interesting because I would have thought that that's where people would be starting. I don't know what your experience is between the number of use cases that you're observing, which are more transactional and really like core business value based, versus the light touch kind of FAQ question and answer content based experiences.
I think in our experience, we've realized that the enterprises have given up on the FAQ kind of conversational interfaces. They don't see great value in that. In fact, they see great value in transactional interfaces, transactional conversational interfaces, right? Whether it is download, because people are coming with a problem and they want to download their policy statement, or they want to book an appointment, or they want to meet someone, or they want to know their account balance, or they want to know when are they supposed to pay their credit card due, right? So all those things are real challenges that the customer is facing, and for all of them today, they would have to either talk to an agent in the call center or log into a website and then sort of figure it out themselves. Now, both can be avoided, and that's why, in fact, when we launched transactional AI in some of the enterprises, and the usage just jumped through the sky. In fact, it was we've seen a adoption like a hockey stick adoption at that point of time. That was
Wow.
very, very surprising too for us.
That's good. But I suppose it rings true because that's where the main value is, isn't it? If you can lighten the load of the kind of like the things that turn the wheels of the business,
Yeah,
which is transactions and services, if you can lighten that load, you can impact the business. A
yeah,
chatbot that does content kind of can impact the website, maybe. Doesn't really necessarily impact the business a whole lot. Whereas if you can root it in these transactional instances, then you're adding real value that's unquestionable, you know.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
so where did the so you've built the NLP engine. You're starting to do work with some large organizations. You're doing a lot of transactional use cases. Where did the voice component come from then? Where was the first time that you thought, hang on, we need to add voice to this equation?
It's a natural extension because the enterprises that we worked with, they tasted blood, right? And they've seen there's automation possible in an area which is hitherto considered not automatable, right? Which is customer interactions at scale, right? And that's when they saw that automation is possible even in that area, then the natural progression is to see if can you actually take the load off the call center by taking some of the or deflecting some of the queries that are coming to the human agents to automated voice AI, right? So that is we realized it, and we felt it is a natural extension, and the enterprises were asking for it, and I think there is a nice wedlock there, and that's how we began. But even otherwise, when we started out Senseforth, our vision was to make technology human-like, in the sense, remove the barriers between people and technology and make it more accessible, more enjoyable, more easy to use, right? So that was the dream, and in my view, personally, I think conversational AI is going to eat the world, right? To paraphrase Andreessen. Now, the reason I think it is so important for the world is everything is going to change in the world with conversational AI. It's going to impact everything, not just some enterprise use cases or a customer support use cases. Um, Around the world, I think if you're at home, your appliances will become conversational, your homes will become conversational. You can probably dock a ship at the port using conversational AI, or fly a plane. Anyway, you can easily pretty much drive the cars with automation AI, with conversational AI automation, and so these are incredible use cases, right? So everything around the world is going to change with conversational AI. And I think we're entering this new world of what I call neo paganism, right? In the ancient world, people used to sort of talk to the stone, the river, the tree, everything, thinking that they're probably infused with life, and they could converse with them. And now the neo paganism is, I think we can embed pretty much every inanimate object or a device or anything in the world with conversational AI, and converse with them. Imagine, let's say, your air conditioner, finding and probably telling you, saying that, look, there is a fault with the cooling fan inside. Can you just call the service, or can I just call the service guy this weekend? Is not only just interacting with it to saying, switch it on and off, but the the air conditioner becoming proactive and trying to call the service agent on this weekend.
Mm. It's yeah, that's definitely, I concur with that 100%. I think that I was thinking of, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We were doing a piece at the moment which is around trying to define conversational AI. It's a hugely broad area, and I posted something on LinkedIn the other week which was asking people how do you define it, and the responses I got was absolutely crazy. Some people we're saying things around like it's a natural language interface that has natural language as an input and natural language as an output, and that's not quite accurate because Amazon Alexa, you can tap it, you can swipe it. Other interfaces have multimodal inputs, and then the output doesn't always have to be conversational. Like you could say to that air conditioning unit, "Hey, what's the problem? Can you contact the salespeople?" And then it might just trigger off a contact raising a support ticket to the salespeople. It doesn't have to converse in language. Like you could tell Alexa to put your heating on, it will just put your heating on. It doesn't have to confirm it with language. You can just play a sound which is like Bing or like an accurate kind of like done sound. And so as I've been thinking more about this, thinking more about like, and this is what we've been talking about for a long time on the podcast, but it's like fundamentally, whether it's human to business or human to object, as you've said, all we're trying to do is communicate, aren't we? If I want to turn on my heating, I need to communicate something. Me as a body needs to communicate something to my heating system. And an efficient way to do that is to have a conversational interface. If I want to communicate with a business, every single option I have today for any business anywhere in the world is likely a conversational channel. The only defense to that would be, or the rebuttal to that would be, websites and apps aren't always conversational. But websites and apps are still fundamentally a communication of information between two things, me expressing what I want and the website giving me what I need. And so fundamentally, everything that is an exchange of information, I think, would be arguably better served with a conversational interface, which concurs with what you've just said, because almost everything could potentially benefit from a conversational interface. Cars, Hoovers, every device that you use, every business channel, it's endless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think in the future, conversational AI combined with gesture interfaces is going to be even more powerful, right? So you're not always using only language, but also just like we use our body language and gestures to communicate things. I think that would be a phenomenal world.
Definitely. Nvidia's got some really good stuff on that front. I don't know if you've seen some of their kind of like gesture control, and you
Yeah.
could look at the camera, it wakes up the assistant. Mycroft, I think, have been doing some stuff with that for a while. Have you kind of explored any of that kind of gesture based or
Not
multimodal
yet.
kind of stuff?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's
Yeah.
definitely interesting. Um, so going back to the story around voice, then. So you began exploring voice. You began experiencing some success there. It sounds like it was predominantly in a contact center environment, was it? Because you were focused on customer service use cases. Did you say?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, yeah, from there on, we moved on to customer acquisition use cases, customer engagement use cases, pretty much touching the lives of a customer across the life cycle.
Right. Interesting. And so the voice capabilities now, you've also been working with, some voice intelligence use cases and things like that. Like where did that kind of voice intelligence stuff come from?
Well, the way I would define voice intelligence is essentially there are three parts. One is ASR, that's your speech recognition engine, and you have the NLP engine, which is where understanding the intent and what's going on. And the third part is the ML, which is sort of fusing back the learnings and modeling that, right? So that's how I would sort of piece this technology together as voice intelligence. And of course, there are multiple use cases which are going beyond general digital voice conversations to call center analytics, both real time and otherwise the recorded versions of it. And the real time would be a great use case in the sense that as the agent is speaking with the customer, the real time call analytics engine could just pop up and say, look, maybe you need to use a different voice or a different tone, or maybe this is, and also this is the solution for this problem. And it's like a truly agent assist would be that,
Mm.
right? In real time, telling the agent to sort of change the way he's communicating or the information that he's communicating, and so on.
Mm. There's been some good examples of agent assists that I've seen, but I've also seen some and heard. I won't mention the companies, but heard some pretty catastrophic examples of people who've tried to do it because it's not always as simple as it sounds. I'm wondering whether have you been kind of exploring those use cases? Have you got any insight into what some of the challenges are around around implementing that kind of stuff?
There are, in fact, we've not implemented the real time, use cases, but we have done some use cases where there are millions of call, millions of minutes of call center data that's available. Now the enterprise doesn't know what's going on, or so can you read through all these, or listen through all these millions of conversations that are happening between customers and agents, and figure out the nuggets of insights, right? And maybe there are some products that people are unhappy with. Maybe maybe they want to buy a specific kind of a product, or maybe they're facing challenges with some products or services. So all those insights can be unearthed through these millions of past data, and in fact you can sort of make it available in a dashboard format for enterprises to take action, which is systemic.
Absolutely. It's interesting because a lot of that's why I try and advise people to begin in terms of their strategy for automation. Look at your calls, look at your conversations that you're already having, ingest that data, analyze it, and then it'll give you a picture of what's kind of to be done. Easier said than done because at that kind of scale, it gets kind of challenging. Do you recommend kind of doing that kind of analysis on the whole, millions, or do you tend to think that it's good enough to take a sample, like a 20,000 sample set or something like that, to get enough insight from?
It depends on the use case. In fact, if you're just setting up a new interaction agent or a virtual assistant for a set of customers, then I think a sample data would be okay. But if you're, let's say, trying to figure out what's going on with customers, what are the customer insights from the last month's conversations, then I think the entire month's conversations would become valuable.
Interesting. Interesting. And then in terms of your sort of approach, the Senseforth approach in general, is it an approach whereby you have your technology available so that people can use it and utilize it how they so choose, or is it more of a technology plus a kind of a service offering? Like, is your technology so kind of either sophisticated or complex that it requires you and your team rather to work with it, or is it available for kind of external people to use on their own, so to speak?
We have both the models available at Senseforth. The reason is some of the enterprises, they don't have the required skill sets to sort of build solutions on our platform, right? Or any of the platforms, right? So and that's not their aim or objective, and they're doing a business, right? And in those cases, they would want us to build using our platform, and deliver ready to use solutions. And there are certain clients who would say, okay, give us the platform, we will build a team around it, and we will build ourselves. Both the models are, I think any company in this space needs to offer both the models, especially because it's nascent and it's still evolving.
Yeah, and different companies have different philosophies, don't they? Some of them want to have control and have the team to kind of build it and manage it, and others don't really see it as part of what they do. And so if we're not a technology company, genes, and so someone else can kind of handle that kind of part.
Yes.
Interesting. How are your kind of what are your observations on the current kind of voice intelligence market, so to speak? So I think we're getting to a place where a lot of people are beginning, a lot of businesses are beginning to understand the value of conversational AI in a conversational setting, back and forth, kind of having conversations with customers. Um, the voice intelligence layer around analyzing conversations in real time, providing agent assist, providing post call analysis, and speaker diarization or call summarization, that kind of stuff. It always seems to me to be kind of something that is obviously incredibly valuable, but not always something that people kind of know is possible. What are your thoughts in general about either the demand in the market or the knowledge or experience of the market as far as the voice intelligence piece is concerned?
Well, I think there are certain use cases which are no-brainers in the sense, in the sense, let's say maps and navigation. I think the voice is clear winner, and there's no other interface, right? For example, you're driving and guiding you through the streets is through a voice. I think that's well accepted use case. Another use case that I think is emerging at this point of time from a voice perspective is drive-through food ordering, right? And
Mm.
if you're actually ordering a burger and saying, okay, I want no tomatoes and no cheese, a chicken burger, it's fairly simple, right? And then that is you don't really need humans to actually handle this kind of a request sitting at the counter, and I'm sure it's extremely boring job. Instead, we can bring in voice interfaces there and understand that intent and deliver at the other counter, right? So those are absolutely the use cases that are emerging, and also, of course, the analysis use cases also exist, but there are a whole bunch of new use cases that are again happening as we speak, which are especially in debt collection, reminders for payments, appointment booking. These are some of the use cases that are fast emerging in the voice AI space, and but I think there are much larger and much bigger use cases that will come in the future, right? For example, uh, voice in education, right? And in certain settings where there is an acute shortage of teachers, voice AI delivering education in classrooms or even online would be a great use case. And of course, even in sort of factory settings, troubleshooting equipment, and without actually going through a manual or a reading through a document, you can have voice AI guiding the person right at the time of the job instantly, and making sure that there are no mistakes made. I think that would be a great use case too, right? And but as we speak, anyway, voice search is transforming search itself. And today I think there's about 20% of the mobile search is voice search, and I think in the next decade it'll be 90%. So these are, and of course, voice commerce is another big favorite of mine. Ordering products and services using voice commerce. Yeah, I mean
Mm.
it's fascinating times we live in.
It very much is. It very much is. And I think that some of this stuff, like, I always, I think I expect things to happen faster than they do, to be honest. Like a lot of those examples that you mentioned there, like the helping workers out in the field, I think Alan AI was doing that for a while. Rain Agency, which was like a marketing agency, then they got a bunch of funding from Black and Decker. Now they're working on a product to try and do that exact kind of thing. And the drive through you mentioned, obviously we've had McDonald's with a Prenti acquisition. VUX we had on the podcast the other week. They're kind of trying to tackle that kind of thing. And so it's like a lot of these use cases that there is examples of it happening, but I always just expect. I think I just got high expectations. I expect it to happen far quicker. Same thing with voice commerce. I was expecting by now that I would be ordering, all my weekly shopping on Alexa, and I would be ordering all sorts of other stuff from Google. Yeah, I'm still kind of not quite there. And half of the issue with that, I wrote about this the other week, which is that the issue really isn't in understanding language. The issue isn't either in well, yeah, it's not in understanding the language or understanding the intent. The issue is in the fulfillment. So it requires businesses to expose those services, and in some cases, in the case of like the if you want to add voice commerce onto your app or something like that, it's not just exposing your back end services, it's also having the drive and motivation to implement the front end. And so I wonder whether you have any thoughts on some of the adoption challenges that businesses are facing right now. What is it that perhaps these commerce use cases and these kind of like in the field use cases, is there a reason why you think that it's maybe perhaps not happening as fastly as it may have done, or is this actually just part and parcel, and this is how fast technology just rolls out, and we just keep being patient and keep trying to find those deals?
As you said, it's not about technology. I think for some of these use cases, the technology already exists. I think it's all about enterprise, adoption. Um, I think if you look at enterprise voice as a space, right? I don't know, if it is defined that way, but enterprise voice, I think, is a huge area, and I think enterprises, businesses will have to have strategy around how to use voice, and then expose. It doesn't need to be an Alexa skill. Nobody, I mean, they're already probably a 100,000 plus Alexa skills out there, but I don't see the adoption very high there. But I think if it is driven by the enterprise as part of the enterprise voice offering, and expose those services, and also work out the fulfillment, and it needs to be strategically planned and organized at the enterprise level, and that is what is missing. They've not yet realized the full potential of voice, and obviously because it's also at the very early years of voice evolution. But I think that's where we are going. I think in the next 10 years, enterprises will realize the value of voice technology and how to use it, just like the way they have realized how to use mobile technology, or right now they're also trying to figure out how does it fit into their metaverse, how does metaverse fit into their strategy, how does let's say social media fits into their strategy. Similarly, I think they need to figure out how does voice fits into their strategy, and what are the transformational journeys that they need to undertake.
Yeah, the on the subject of kind of value, a lot of the value that has been seeked, is seek a word? Seeked, sought. That's the word. A lot of the value that's been sought thus far is has been, I suppose, a mixture of cost reductions, especially in the instances that you mentioned earlier on, where you started, which was around automating transactions. So you want to reduce the cost of delivering services, potentially reduce some of your overheads from a staffing point of view. I think in recent times, I've noticed in a lot more enterprises implementing it to prevent further increased costs down the line. It's not that they want to get rid of contact center staff today. It's that they know their business is growing, they know customer expectations are rising, and they don't necessarily want to employ another 200 next year. So they're trying to kind of, implement this stuff in order to save recruiting later. And so I've noticed a little bit of a shift in value, should we say, from businesses that are trying to apply this. What kind of value are you observing your clients seeking? And do you think that will change in future as adoption grows?
Actually, it's a great question. Yes, you're right, and most of the enterprises started with cost reduction as the number one priority, and that's when they have embraced conversational AI, even with its existing flaws, right? So because that's the cost reduction is their primary motive, and that I think is being delivered all right. Now, along the way, enterprises have started looking at revenue generation using conversational AI, and I think that's again a phenomenal value driver. And there are several use cases where we have implemented for large enterprises to medium enterprises where revenue generation becomes key. And it's a natural extension again. Now the third progression is the you know customer engagement throughout their life cycle. So that's another key element. It's in my view, I think the lines between customer acquisition and customer support and customer engagement are blurring, right? And the customer doesn't care, whether you are from customer care department or marketing department, doesn't matter. I mean, for for him or her, enterprise is one entity, and he's or she is dealing with the enterprise. They just want one unified experience, and that conversational AI can provide that. And even if they just bought a product and then they want to sort of get some support around it, and conversational AI can help them buy the product and also provide support on that product, and also along the way figure out if the customer is happy with that product or not, and throughout their life cycle, and thereby increasing the NPS. So all these three different value drivers are very attractive for enterprises today.
Very good. That is very good. Um, what are some of your in the over the history of running Senseforth and building Senseforth? What are some of your kind of like proudest use cases, proudest client? You don't have to necessarily name the client, but like, what are some of your like proudest implementations that you've kind of that Senseforth has been involved in?
There are a couple I would love to talk about those. One is, of course, for a large bank in the world. They have 60 million customers, and we have transformed their customer service, customer interaction using our virtual assistant, and that was a phenomenal success. It handles 15 million queries per month, right? And that's a whopping volume. I've not heard any other virtual assistant out there handling that steep volume consistently and growing. Right? And also the same thing is available on 11 different channels. There are incredible number of intent. There are about nearly 8,000 different unique intents, and also 200 plus banking transactions that the virtual assistant handles. 250 plus skills that are banking skills that are available. So it's a phenomenal, sort of implementation, and we were, very very happy about that implementation and how we successfully delivered. And the second one is for Government of India. Now, the Government of India has thousands of citizen services, and delivering those citizen services is becoming a challenge. They built an app, mobile app. There is a website. All that is fine, but then there are millions of people in India who are not probably able to use a mobile app or a website. Now, how do you deliver citizen services to millions of people? And the solution that we built is expected to serve, 700 million plus people in India. It's a phenomenal implementation, and people can just ask anything. Maybe they just want to know what is their pension fund doing, or they want to find nearest blood bank where they can get A positive blood, or they students want to find out scholarships which are sponsored by the government, or any kind of government services. They're all coming on the conversational AI platform, and I think that's going to be an outstanding use case.
Wow. That's wicked. That's huge, huge numbers. That you get 10% of them 700 million people using it, and all of a sudden yeah. I hope they're paying you a lot for that because your bills are going to shoot through the roof when you get 70 million people using the platform. That's really good. That's really interesting. It makes me think about when you get to that kind of scale, and you're talking there about at the very beginning you're talking about changing the way that you are as an individual in order to be able to grow and scale the company and learning lots of new skills and all that kind of stuff, changing who you are. When you begin working on implementations of that size, inevitably you need to change, or the team needs to change certain things as well. whether it's technology, security, stability, whether it's team skills and bringing and building bigger teams with more skill sets in there and stuff like that. If you compare, building an assistant that's going to have a 700 million potential user base with somebody who is just beginning to build their first conversational AI, one conversation designer and a developer, things change quite dramatically, don't they? And
Absolutely.
so, what are some of the kind of things that, as you work on a larger deployments, some of the core things that need to be in place in order for those things to be a success?
Right. You're right. Absolutely. In fact, initially it would be a lot to do with what I call handcrafting a solution, and as you sort of grow and then work with large organizations with large implementations, I think you need to bring in structure and processes into the mix. And there are several different teams of people working on these projects, and there has to be a seamless integration across the teams, and communication, and also ultimately it's all about also standardizing some of the things that we deliver. For example, there are no standards in conversational AI, right? And I think building those standards in and processes in creating those right user, what kind of a user interaction is right in what kind of a setting, and those things I think we need to sort of build at an organization level, and train our teams in that.
Mm,
That's the need of the hour as we progress from a sort of a startup into a scaling startup.
interesting. It's interesting you mentioned the kind of there's no standards, and what makes that more interesting is because although we call it a nascent industry, the reality is it's actually existed for quite a long time. If you go back to the 90s and you look at the work that Nuance were doing in the call center space in the 90s, the first ever kids toy that had a voice user interface was a doll in like 1986 or something like that. So this technology has existed for a long time. The practice of building this technology has existed for a long time. Fair enough, the technology has got better and more capable in the last 10 years or so, but still it has existed for a long time. So I'm just wondering, there's still no necessarily kind of like standards around design, standards around development, deployment, maintenance, that kind of stuff. Do you have any thoughts on where those standards might come from, if they do at all?
I think it has to come from companies like us. What's happening, and while it has existed for long, including the famous Microsoft's Clippy, which
Yeah,
was
of
which
course.
was in Office applications, which was ahead of its time. Now I think the things have changed dramatically. I think the enterprises today are demanding this. It is no longer a shiny toy that you can put on your website. The enterprises are demanding value from this, and they're making investments so that they can embrace this technology and serve their customers better. Now, in that scenario, I think it's the responsibility of startups like us, the players in conversational AI, to come together and define standards in terms of what is the best user experience, or a best conversational AI experience, or best voice AI experience. All those standards need to be built.
Absolutely. You alluded to this a little bit earlier on, um, but I'm wondering whether we can get into any other areas. So you mentioned that some of the ways and where this technology may head in future, where this, not necessarily the technology itself, but the deployment of these interfaces, and you mentioned multimodal interfaces, gesture control, things like that. What other things are kind of exciting you about the future direction of this stuff?
Oh, there are lots of things. In fact, the use cases where how voice AI could help the elderly, or differently abled people. How do you actually make their lives a little more comfortable? And using voice AI would be a phenomenal use case. I think it's worth building that and taking it out there. And of course, another one is the mental health situation in the world today. It's rampantly on the rise. with the pandemic, sort of infusion, all that. Now, I think definitely the world doesn't have enough doctors or consultants who can help people at scale with that. I think their voice AI and conversational AI coming in and helping people out. And in general, healthcare, I think the at least the screening and triaging part of the solution can be done by definitely conversational AI using voice effectively. So there are, I can think of a ton of these use cases. Um, it could be a scuba diver, under the water, and you could have a voice AI helping the person, glide around or train better, right? So they could be phenomenal use cases.
Experiential. I like that. Experiential, real world use cases. That's really good. You mentioned the metaverse earlier on, and I've been investigating the metaverse. I wouldn't claim to be an expert in any way, shape, or form. There's obviously synergies there between a lot of the stuff that's happening in this industry in general with digital humans and things like that, and digital humans for customer experience and customer service and things. It seems to be obvious to me, at least, that there will be digital humans in the metaverse representing brands and companies. And beyond that, other companies may actually emerge as digital humans within that space, and inevitably the interaction layer will be conversational. And so you mentioned there earlier on about companies considering voice, considering social, considering the metaverse, and how all that plays together. Do you view the metaverse as being almost the same thing ish as this conversational user interface, or do you think there's difference? There's inevitably differences, but I mean, do you view it as being an extension of what you're already doing, or do you view it as being an entirely new domain?
It's a great question. In fact, I think metaverse is definitely a different beast. The conventional conversational AI also needs to be redefined there, and there obviously there would be no there could be hybrid user interfaces there, but I think, as I said earlier, gestures become a very, very critical component, and gestures combined with conversational AI, voice AI especially, is the need of the hour there. Now, there are different challenges. For example, let's say you walk into an environment. It's the same challenge that I sort of talked about earlier, right? In our home, there's this voice device, and it doesn't really cater to a multi activity or multi people environment robustly, right? And because they're not built that way, they're built for one-on-one interaction. Now, I think it's time that we need to think of voice AI differently, and bring in the multi people interaction. In fact, we were even sort of discussing a use case very early on, a few years ago. What if there is a train station or an airport, and there is an inquiry counter, and if you can actually handle that with a virtual assistant or a device, how would it be, right? And that is, again, extremely challenging environment. There could be multiple people asking the same different questions at the same time. Somebody is overlapping somebody. How do you handle that, right? I think it's the same challenge in metaverse too, or similar. If it is just one virtual assistant, talking to, let's say, 20 people in an environment, then it needs to be designed to handle that kind of an interaction, multi-party interaction. Or you might want to sort of spin off multiple digital avatars, and then you could have a one-on-one conversation. So the entire interface paradigm is so fascinating there. Again, I think we have a large canvas to experiment and figure out what works, what doesn't work, and there's a lot of research that needs to go into it, um, and, um, and especially if it is another thing is, let's say, as an extension to metaverse is, let's say, VR situation. How does conversational AI or gestural plus conversational AI works in VR environments. I think that's also a big challenge. A lot of research has to go into it. We have to figure out use cases and come up with new solutions.
Interesting. I never thought about. I mean, the value of conversational AI is that it is incredibly scalable. So rather than a contact center having a conversation one on one on the phone, you can scale that to have thousands of conversations at the same time. And I suppose in a metaverse environment where you have actual representations of humans, you're back to that one to one environment again. It won't scale unless you can find a way of every person sees a different version of the shop assistants in that shop. And so everyone sees a slightly different thing in order to make it scale, which would be, yeah, don't know how that would work really, but it's very, I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that one challenge, but it's
Fascinating.
definitely, yeah, definitely a lot to
Definitely
it.
fascinating. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Well, Sridhar, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, go to senseforth.ai to find out more about Senseforth and what Sridhar and his team can do for you. That is senseforth.ai. If you're tuning in on the podcast, I'll put all of these links, as always, in the show notes. And if you haven't got your ticket to VUX World at Voice 22 yet, voicesummit.ai is where you need to go. Use the promo code VUX20 to save 20%. Looking forward to seeing you there. Until next time, until next week, we'll see you on the next one.